尊敬的各位来宾，欢迎参加校长论坛——中国的国际化教育。下面有请演讲嘉宾上场。Distinguished guests, welcome to participate in the School Principals Panel, International Education in China. Next, let's invite our speakers on stage.
好，欢迎大家来到今天的这个校长论坛。我们今天非常荣幸有很多来自国内还有来自美国的教育的专家包括学校的创始人包括校长那么今天呢，我们借这个机会可以深入的讨论一些大家关心的问题尤其是国际化教育方面的问题。我呢先用中文开个头。等会儿我们用英文来做相关的这个讨论。我先给大家看张图，来大致的把一些趋势讲一下，然后我们再看相关的一些问题那大家可以看到图上，是我们过去10年左右的时间，中国的学生出国留学和海归的一些数字。那么简单的讲，从2007年，我们大概14万人出国留学，到2017年，我们有61万人出国留学，大概在这11年的时间里面有4倍的增长。与此同时，我们看到下面这条红线是海归的人数，海归的人数从07年大概5万人回国，到去年48万人回国，有大概10倍的增长。OK， 那么如果我们去看一下这个回国的比例如果07年我简单的用当年回国的人数除以当年出国留学的人数，大概是个1:3的比例。如果我们看2016年或者其实过去的5年，都是一个80%的比例，大概就是出去5个回来4个。OK， 那么这样的话会带来一个非常复杂的，可能作为家长比较纠结的问题，就是我们在选择教育的模式和路径的时候，现在这个可能决定的点再往前移，已经不是一个简单的我们去决定在大学的这个升学阶段是参加高考还是出国留学这样一个简单的问题，而是说我们可能要去考虑整个的这个 K12的过程中，什么样的一种教育模式更适合自己的小朋友？那么随着出国留学这个大潮，这么多的学生，现在将近每年50-60万的学生出国留学再回来，在这样一个大潮里面，确实我们也带来了国内的这个国际化教育的非常高速的发展。在这方面，大家肯定都知道。在过去的10几年里面，在中国不同类型的国际化的教育都在蓬勃的发展。今天呢，也非常的这个有幸，有代表不同类型的这个国际化教育的专家，有我们上海鲍玉刚学校的总校长David Mansfield，是应该中国可能现在最热门的双语学校之一。有来自于常熟 UWC 的创始人和董事长王家鹏先生，Mark 是代表一个IB 教育，可能从创始到今天都是一个非常独树一帜的国际化的非常国际化的这个一种教育模式。有 Maxine 是清华附中国际部的学术校长，在中国最顶尖的公立学校里面一个国际学校的校长。还有今天非常有幸有 Eddie 是这个来自美国Texas Charter School 创始人，也是校长。那么等会儿我们来分别听几位专家的这个精彩的分享。那么我先让每位花几分钟时间 跟大家非常简要的介绍一下他们的学校。另外呢，在各自不同的领域、各种不同类型的学校里面，那么如何在国内拓展国际化教育，让他们先分享一些心得，然后我们再展开讨论。那么下面我先请 David 来跟我们分享。
Thank you, Yang Yi. Well, hello everybody. Thank you for coming. And yeah, the international education scene in China is a fascinating one. I'm fortunate to have been headmaster of an international school for foreign passport holders here in Beijing, Dulwich, Beijing, which is part of the, if you like, the old tradition of international schools that were established for expat workers, international workers working overseas. But increasingly, in the latter part of the last decade, larger numbers of returning Chinese with international passports, foreign passports, but also a number of Chinese that were finding passports or having work permits to get into international schools were coming to that sort of school. But from the middle of the last decade, from about 2005-06, a new type of school was emerging, a Chinese international school, which was offering an international curriculum, but to PRC citizens, to Chinese citizens. And one of the leading protagonists in that move was YK Pao School in Shanghai, founded by the daughter and grandson of a leading Chinese shipping magnate who made his money in Hong Kong, came down from Ningbo, and having made his money, invested back in education, particularly universities. But in memory of him, this school was established, and it's a really fascinating school, a not-for-profit school, which is founded on the principle of genuine bilingualism, trying to create children that are two-brained. They're Chinese-brained, but they're also internationally brained. They have the capacity to be Chinese, to have a Chinese identity, but at the same time are able to function effectively overseas and be successful in American universities. We know that many Chinese students that go overseas to study don't always succeed. The aim here is to create students that are not just going to succeed but thrive and become business leaders, political leaders in the China of the future. So Boyagang is a school that is attempting to try and bridge the gap between East and West, to try and create a pedagogy, a curriculum, an experience, and certainly an outcome that creates children that can be effective in the new China and lead the world as China moves on into its future greatness.
Great. Let me turn to Mark, who has spent many years trying to build United World College in mainland China, and finally succeeded in 2015 with students now more than 100 different countries and territories coming to Changshu UWC. Tell us a little bit about your experience in building this kind of very unique international education in China.
Okay, thank you, Yi, for introduction. So I come from an organization that named United World College. It's a global institution, has 17 colleges around the world, and the one that the only actually the campus in mainland of China is located in Changshu. The UWC movement started in quite early back in the 1960s when IB was not even formed, which later actually UWC was one of the founding institutions that joined with the IB to found the program, which today that many of you have known and used the curriculum. So the special feature of UWC is it actually that try to bring the student from all over the world at age of 16 to 19, and by actually that educating the young people and bring them together from a diverse background, different nationality, different religion, different belief, and most importantly, different social class, to give them a life-changing experience, and in hoping that one day they will be the peacemakers. So UWC changed my life, and that's the reason why that I would spend last many years building such a college, and that the Changshu campus will have a student come from over 104 nationalities represented. It's a global learning village.
Let me turn to Maxine, who has a beautiful school within the campus of Tsinghua Fuzhong, a very top Chinese public high school. Tell us a little bit about how you built your curriculum within that context.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we are part of Tsinghua University and Tsinghua University High School, but we are in a separate building with a separate distinct program. So we're somewhat like an American charter school, for those of you who are familiar with those. The difference with our school is it was built for the children of returning Chinese. That was the major focus. And so many of our children, their parents work at the local universities, especially Tsinghua, or they are working for Microsoft, or they're working for other companies in the area, or their families have returned to take care of their families. But for a variety of reasons, these are for returning Chinese. Now, we do have other students as well, from Korea, Japan, Macau, Hong Kong, and a few local students that came in early before the rules were really impressed upon everyone. So we do have a mixed variety of students. While they are ethnically mostly Chinese or Asian, they have come from mixed backgrounds. So the uniqueness of the school is that we have to develop students who may stay in China after going abroad for university, and most of them will go abroad. Very few will stay. A few of them will. We do have a couple of students at Tsinghua University. But we also have to develop it for those students who will come back or may go to a third country. So I think one of the important roles of international education in China is to figure out what's your end game. Where are your students going? What's important at the end? And then backtrack it so that you can develop the school for those youngsters. And for us, it's a variety of purposes, but it has to be globally oriented. So the Chinese culture is extremely important in the school. All students must study Mandarin from 1st grade through 12th grade, regardless of their background. All students must take Chinese history and Eastern art in the middle school, so that they're getting a background in the different cultural things. But then one of the things we really try to do a lot is to combine what we do at the school. And a lot of that is around professional development for teachers, so that as we're looking at our school, we have to choose the right kinds of teachers, both local teachers and foreign teachers. Those who are willing to give up something to learn something. Those who are willing to work with others, regardless of the country they come from, to develop a curriculum that's very robust for students, so that they can see different points of view. I think one of the other important aspects of international education is that we emphasize the 21st century skills throughout our education, not as separate courses. You cannot teach a separate critical thinking course. It needs to be part of everything else we do. So that overlies all curriculum. Those skills are just as important as any curriculum areas. Thank you.
So let me turn to Eddie. I have to say, when I heard your Texas charter school is a trilingual school with English, Spanish, and Chinese being mandatory, I was very surprised. So tell us your interest and motivation in making Chinese a required language in your school.
Well, there's a couple of reasons why it's very, very important. One, my background is very different. I did not come to education in the traditional manner. I spent 20 years in the United States Marine Corps as an infantry officer, traveling the world and seeing international officers who spoke many different languages. But in the United States, we barely speak English. And so part of my motivation was to get the languages down to the kindergarten level so that our kids could master. For Texas, being the 10th largest economy in the world as a state itself, our number one trading partners are with Mexico, but also with China. China is very, very important to the world. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that our children would be able to not only learn the language, but to understand the culture. And it's why, as part of the 18,000 kids that we have learning Chinese, which is the largest education system in America that is having students learn Chinese, that we want to be able to have schools here in China that we can get more American students to come to China. As the chart is showing kids going the other way, I want American kids to come compete here in China to be able to go to the universities here in China. I think having our two countries closer is better for all of us.
Very well said, especially at this juncture. I think the more we can
Yes.
encourage the flow, the better. So I'm a parent as well, and I have to say, you know, trying to think through the education model, I would put them through knowing that they need English, they need Chinese roots. Now we want them to have the orientation and skills for innovation, entrepreneurship. It seems what we want from our children goes up all the time. And so I'm curious at YK PAO, how do you balance all that in trying to, you know, groom future leaders, but also they have only so much time that they can actually spend on studying and learning. What is the pedagogy and the innovation around that you have put through at YK PAO to enable kids to learn all these things but still have a balanced growth?
Gosh, it's a big question. I think the key thing is about building on the great foundations and strengths of Chinese education, because there's a lot of the children come to us from Chinese kindergartens. They already have a well-established pattern of learning. They come from very, very aspirational families. So the education that we're adding as a school is in partnership with the parents. The mission of the school is three things. It is holistic education. So right from the beginning, the school was founded not by specifically educationalists, but by very well-intentioned founders who wanted to create good people who would make a difference in the world they were going to be working in. So it's a values-driven organization. So rather than just saying it's whole person education, it really is. There's a very, very wide range of activities that go into the co-curricular program. And the delivery of values education goes right to the very depths of the way that, that discipline, relationships with students are built. So certainly that's there. And then there is the attempt to try and create people that are not just knowledge factories, but are actually able to express and deal with the world in which they're going to be moving into by expressing skills in an effective and realistic way. So that comes down to pedagogy. And I think one of the interesting things that we have developed at PAO School is, if you like, we work on the three phases of learning. And the first phase of learning, which is, if you like, developing a knowledge base, is incredibly well done in China. The Chinese primary system, particularly the Shanghai Maths program, is probably the best in the world. The children have fantastic number work by the time they get to age 11. Their character work is amazing as well. And all that builds in the brain synaptic connections, that there is a brain there that is very, very able to process information, to learn material, and to go forward. So the first thing to do is to make sure you don't lose that, to continue that focus on building a knowledge base within the long-term memory of the child. But then to create many, many opportunities for them to build on that in the second and third phases. I talk about three phases of learning. That goes right back into the ancient medieval process of learning that said that learning was one, knowledge, grammar. The second phase was the dialogic, the Socratic, which is the ability to talk about what you know. So having learnt stuff, you then need to talk about it, play with it, apply it, balance it, question it, evaluate it. And then the third phase of learning, which is the Platonic phase or the rhetorical phase, which is to actually do something with it, to create something new, to write an essay, to make a documentary, to build a play, to write a play, to paint a picture. So these three phases have to be splayed together to create children that are not just able to remember and regurgitate, but are able to apply knowledge effectively and then to speak it out, to communicate it. We use quite a lot of theory at the background of our teacher training. So Vygotsky as a key theorist that we would see as important. And Vygotsky argued it's very important that children articulate what they've learned. They speak. And as we know, many Chinese students particularly are really very quiet in schools. So getting them to talk, to articulate their learning, to share their learning, and to develop their learning is a really important part of the pedagogical structure. Now, obviously, all the extracurricular stuff that wraps around that is very important as well. But I would argue that the way they're taught, and that comes out of our professional learning centre that trains all our teachers to make sure that we fall in line with a coherent pedagogy, is probably one of the roots of why we're able to build kids that go out the other end successful.
Thanks, David. I think the learning process is very important for the children, not just in the classroom, but a lot of this happens really outside the classroom. And I want to ask Mark, with your students coming from over 100 different countries at Changshu UWC, how do you leverage that to actually strengthen the global kind of education that both Chinese students and also the international students actually receive at the school?
Thank you. Well, actually learning takes place in classroom, outside of classroom. In fact, we are a residential school that gives a huge advantage for 24 times 7. And it is quite often.
They do sleep, right?
Well, as we all know that IB is one of the most, let's say, demanding programs. So they already have very limited hours. However, the exciting things when you put over students from over 100 nations, learning take place in the day room, learning take place in a class discussion, learning take place in the dormitory where we try to put students, 4 of them from different part of the continent, to be living under the same roof. If I recall my personal experience when I was a student at UWC, quite a lot of moments I remember this until this day was a great discussion took place in the canteen. The great discussion that I had discussed with a student from a very diverse background. So we always encourage our students to speak and to share with others. And the fact that our students every single day, if they spend one dinner with one student from different country, it's going to take 100 days until they actually understand their friends, but also that cross over the social diversity. It's so important that we need to create a campus that has not only one social class group, but also in Changshu UWC we have the student from the ex-war zone, to the migrant kids from Jiuqian or from Dandelion School from Beijing. We also have the CEO's kids, so that they learn from each other. In the reality that a learning place is not only a place that they learn about academic knowledge, but as a global citizen, it's important to aware the real world they're living in. And I think that for me, I'm very proud that our students not only that excel well in the classroom, but they actually take steps further out to be a service leaders.
Great. I think diversity certainly is very important at this critical age as they form their values and their outlook. I think at Changshu UWC, that's a fantastic learning environment to have such a diverse student body that they can actually learn from each other.
To maybe add one more sentence, there's at one of the UWC founder in Pearson College said that how can there be a peace when we do not know each other? How can we know each other when we do not meet each other? Definitely today, in the very turbulent world of today, we need young people to understand each other. And I think that one of the important aim of education is actually keep this world in a peaceful and harmonic global village.
Well said. So I'm going to ask Maxine a little bit about the linkage between high school and college. Obviously, Tsinghua International School is next to Tsinghua University, a top university within China. Harvard actually, our graduate school of education, put out a report 2 years ago called Turning the Tide, which has been widely kind of discussed, in the spirit of not only wanting admission offices of universities to look at academic achievement, but more, their broader interest, their community service, and their interest in helping others. Those are important dimensions in addition to the academic performance. To what degree you take kind of what university admission offices or universities look for and have your education at the high school level prepare students to enter into college, not just to get the offer, but actually do well at the university level?
That's actually our mantra at the school. Getting in is step one. Doing well is the most important step, though. It doesn't help to get into the best school if you can't survive there. So those skills necessary for survival in university, we pay very close attention to. The academic skills are extremely important, but beyond that, how do those academic skills get utilized to perform other kinds of activities? So for example, our community service club, it's not just the goal to get out. Yes, we want to reach out and help people. But our students have an executive board, as they have for Model United Nations, and they have for Debate Club. There's a group of students who learn leadership skills, and they run the program with only support from the teachers. So what they're learning through that is collaboration skills, which are emphasized from first grade on, not just at the high school level. They're learning to take a role that leads the rest of the group without being dictators, but involving people and getting their ideas and bringing them together. So one of the things those groups do is they also produce a report at the end of the year, like the state of Model United Nations, the state of our community service club. They have data. They involve all of the kinds of skills they're taught in class are used to develop these projects outside of school. And this is by their own voluntary efforts. Also at our high school level, by 12th grade, many of the students choose, we do not force this, but they choose to do independent study projects, where they choose a topic that they want to learn in depth, and they may work with other students on that. Now what they're doing is taking all of these skills they've learned, and they're moving them to another level. And those cannot be self-study of courses or reading a textbook. These have to be projects that they develop that they will take action on, or they will produce by the end of the year. One of the things we do is we pay very close attention to what the university says the other skills are, and those are those 21st century skills. They have to go into universities being able to think for themselves, to be innovative, to be creative, to also be able to do research. Research begins in primary school, the basic tenets of it. By high school, they are doing in-depth research. And that's an important skill that transcends whatever content. They need to be able to do research in the science lab. They need to be able to do it in social studies, in sociology fields, but they also need to be able to do it on independent projects of their own. Those skills, our students have told us, made a difference for them at university. When the professor says, here's the project, let's get started, they know what to do. They don't sit there thinking about it. They know what to do next. And those are the skills that when we listen to admissions officers, we're not just listening for what they want. We're also listening to what skills do our kids need to have to survive at those schools. So that for one thing, if they do well, it bodes well for future admissions. If they do poorly, then those universities are not looking at our students so closely anymore. So it's on us to make sure they leave with the academic and the social skills and the 21st century learning skills that are needed.
Great, and I think that's really the important elements in terms of longer term success, not just getting the offer, but actually do well in college and do well longer term. Eddie, when you told me you have hundreds of Chinese students at your school, I'm very curious, what were your first impressions of the Chinese students coming to Texas to study in a predominantly American student body? And also I want to ask you a second question, which is, whatever your observation may be, what advice would you give to Chinese parents who consider sending their children to the US for high school education?
Excellent. Before I can answer that, though, I've got to say how excited I am to listen to this panel's answers, because what you were talking about for preparing the kids for the future, our middle name is leadership, and the type of leadership that we teach is servant leadership. Our motto is others before self, and starting at the kindergarten level, every kid has to do a research project to find something that they want their classmates to serve other people. They come together, they vote, but only one gets chosen. And then they continue that process. But every year, every student decides as a group to be able to give back to the community. As for the international students, the Chinese students who come to our school, it's very, very important that we're not just learning the language of each other, but we're learning the culture of each other. And by having the Chinese student in the group with the American student, the American kids really get to know the Chinese culture. Chinese students they work very, very hard. Some American kids need to learn how to work harder. So it's a great model for the American kids to have some hardworking Chinese students. The other thing for the Chinese parent, they're usually concerned about two things. Number one, is my child going to be safe? And we work very, very hard to make sure that the children are safe. The second thing that they want is, can you guarantee me that their kid can get into Harvard? And no, we can't. But our kids are getting into some of the top universities. One young lady is accepted into Brown University, but not just into Brown University. She got accepted into the early admission to medical school. It wasn't just her academic piece, it was the leadership piece that they saw in the student. Biggest encouragement would be, for me as a dad, to help the child to develop what is it that the child wants to do in their life, and make sure that we're matching that kid's desire, their skill set, with the right university. I think that is more important than just looking at the U.S. News and World Report and picking a ranking.
I think thinking about appropriate university or college choices is indeed very, very important. And I can tell you for sure, there is no guaranteed way to get to Harvard. But what about the second question in terms of, for Chinese parents who want to send their kids to high school in the U.S., what should they think about in terms of preparedness? What should they get ready for?
I would encourage the Chinese parent to do research on the school that they're sending their kid. Trust the agencies less. Trust your research more. Make sure that you are finding a place that truly has your child's best interest at heart. At IL Texas, it's not a secondary thought of having the Chinese student there. Our whole system, my granddaughter is starting kindergarten this year. She's learning Chinese. She is going to be a different American student welcoming that Chinese student. I would just encourage the Chinese parent to also make sure that they get into a whole rounded school that's going to take care of their child.
Great. I want to ask an open question to the panel. I think you have probably many parents here, whatever their profession may be, to think about the right educational path for their children, whether it's the dual language model of YK PAL, whether it's an IB school as an UWC, or international schools if they have the right conditions for. This has been pulled back. So it used to be graduate school, you go abroad and you go to college here. Then now we have more undergraduate students going abroad for college than for graduate school. And now we have a small but a rapidly growing number of students who go abroad for high school and even earlier stage of education. What would be your advice to Chinese parents who face those choices and need to decide kind of at a very early stage, maybe even after kindergarten, that they have to choose the type of school they want to enter? What's the best way to think about that?
Yeah, if I could just have a stab at that one. One of the things that I often say to Chinese parents is I want to try and make your decision as difficult as possible to send your child to what is one of our biggest competitors. Our biggest competitor at PAL School is the East Coast prep schools in America, where the parents are looking to send their children maybe from age 13, 14, 15. My take on this is that the longer I'm in China, the more I begin to realize the easy part of the bilingual equation is the English part. The most difficult part is the Chinese. Not the speaking, obviously, the children are Mandarin speakers. But if they start taking an all-English education too early, which a number are, they very quickly will begin to lose the very in-depth reading and writing skills that they're going to need when they return. The figures are suggesting that upwards of 90% of Chinese that go overseas to study are returning to China to work. The average income of a Chinese graduate coming back from an American or British university is under 10,000 RMB a month. The ROI just doesn't add up. And one of the reasons for that is because the English language skill is great, but actually you can pick that up in Chinese, in a Chinese World Foreign Language School very, very effectively. What you need is to be able to slot back into Chinese society. You need the guanxi, you need to be able to write and read very deeply, you need to be conversant with what's going on here. And if you go too early, you end up becoming a transatlantic, lost in China and lost in America, neither one nor the other. And it's very important, I think, that we begin to earth our children. The mission statement of PAL School is there to make sure that Chinese young people know they're Chinese. They are fundamentally versed in Chinese culture, Chinese understanding, but at the same time able to embrace an American and British international viewpoint, which allows them to be effective when they go overseas. And you can't really do one without the other. So I would certainly counsel parents to not send their children abroad too early, because if they go 13, 14 and have an all-English education, the Mandarin will be affected and it will make it more difficult in the long
run. This is certainly something we contend with at the end of 8th grade. We have stemmed the tide of children leaving our school at the end of 8th grade, however, down to a very minimum number of students. And that is by providing a similar, very high quality education to the young people, similar to what they would get in a US school, but also with a real basis in Chinese culture and language, so that they're getting both. Because if that's what parents want, they can get it right here. Meanwhile, they are at home with their families, where the culture can continue, where the parents can influence their decisions, where the Chinese values are intact. And they can lose that by being at a boarding school away from home, where things are a little different and there are opportunities they hadn't thought about socially. Another thing I often say to parents is that your children are protected here, and I don't mean from crime. That's not what I mean. I've watched young people here in China be able to be children until they finish high school. There's a real advantage to that. There's a real advantage to being protected, and that you don't have to compete and try to be 35 when you're only 16. I spent 35 years in American education, and I am an American and I love it. But I also see the value in being in China. And I often say to my family when I go home, our kids don't know what they're missing. The focus is on education here. They don't have to do all those other things it takes away from their education. They get to be kids.
And I would like to be able to add, we kind of solved both of those problems, and they're very, very real. All of our Chinese students, when they come to our school, they still have to take Chinese. They're put in a different course, but they have to take Chinese. For that very reason, I want the student to continue to develop their command of the Chinese language. Our students, we do not do homestay, because I am a father of 2 daughters. I want to make sure that my daughters are protected. So we have student apartments, and the girls go to one side of the student apartments. We have an armed guard in the middle, like any good dad would do, and then we have the boys on the other side. They can't leave the campus unless there's 2 people. We do several different things to make sure that my children are safe. Both of those are very legitimate concerns, but I've tried very, very hard to make sure that I address both of those concerns.
Let me ask Mark a different question, and then Eddie as well. I think in the audience we have many people who are probably in various investment roles related to education. either from a technology side or from an investment side. And to meet that rising interest and demand for preparation to go abroad for global education, there are many opportunities to open schools. And you both have opened very successful schools. What would be your advice to people who think about opening schools to meet that demand?
Okay, so openings. So first of all, schools are the place that the parents send their kids, entrusting us for their family future. It's an important place that it's just not another, service entity as a business to establish for short term. And secondly, international education in China is a very hot plate on one hand, from a user's perspective, from a parent's perspective. We have a lot of parents who want a high quality international education. On the other hand, there are regulatory, the new updated regulations that do put a certain area fenced. So as an investor, I guess it's very difficult to actually find out in the first moment how or where you want to be in 10 years of time with your institution. And quite often, when you start a school, start from the getting the land ready to the build the school, to the opening until you see the first graduating class. That's going to take a couple of years, possibly over 10 years of time. So it's a long-term commitment. Often that when I look at my past journey of building a United World College, I think that the most rewarding is actually the moment when they see the students graduating from the school with the passion that to give back to the institution. And I think that as a not-for-profit institution, which United World College belongs to, one of the very important asset for us are not what I look at all the investment for the return on the bank account, but for actually that all the amazing young people we educate. However, there is a reality in the world that when the investor is putting in the amount of investment into such an industry, you do expect to perform, and you do expect to make the counterbalance. You do want to actually get the kids to the good university. It is not easy, and being there myself, being in actually China, that with a college that both bring the young people from China, but also bring young people from the rest of the world, the reality that being the legal person of such an institution sometimes do keep you sleepless night. So do think carefully when you put up the model. But it's again, I want to encourage all the colleagues who actually that want to be in education. I truly believe if there are more education institutions in this world, there will be more people that be well educated. The world is going to be a better place.
That's a hard question for me to answer because I come from it from more of a service angle, just like you as an educator. I would encourage the investor to make sure that part of your calculation on your return on your investment is the value that you're giving to the children, the opportunity that you're giving to the children. The math can work out that you get some return financially on your investment, but there's probably places that you can make more money faster. Let's make sure that we have schools that are going to be around for 100 years.
Great. Yes.
I'd just make one comment about that. There are lots of new international schools, but I would caution everyone that you take some time to plan those schools. When someone tells you they can open a school within the next 6 months, anyone can do that. You open the door, you let the kids in. But what is the quality of the program? The children don't have time to come into a school and spend 2 years for the school to figure out how to run the program. That should be figured out before they enter the door. So do your homework, make sure that the school is viable, make sure that the people who are planning the school have a very good plan and they've worked out the organization of it, the curriculum, all of that. If not, the children who come in are going to be shortchanged. And that becomes a moral and ethical dilemma.
Can I just add on, according to the ICS study, that in the next 10 years, we're going to add another 7,000 international schools on this scope, which in the last 100 years, we've developed only 9,000 of international schools. So where are the teachers going to come from? That's a big question mark in front of every educator's table. Second, it is also the quality of the faculty, the quality of the teacher that matters, because they're the one delivering the day-to-day education in the class. So it is important to build a good hardware, but it's even more important to invest in your faculty building. And it's going to take quite a bit of time until that is going to be in place.
Very much so. So I want to ask one last question, which is, if there's one thing you can change, may that be regulation, student, teacher, parents, whatever it may be. If there's one thing you can change that you think would make a big difference in terms of international education in China, what would be your pick?
I think at the moment the biggest problem facing Chinese international schools is regulation, and as a result, cluttering of the curriculum. We have to follow the Chinese curriculum, which is a brilliant curriculum. I have no problems with the Chinese curriculum per se, but adding to it an international curriculum, putting it into a bilingual approach, having half faculty who are international, half faculty who are Chinese, creates an immense number of complications when there are forever a collection of regulatory requirements coming upon you. So I would say make it a little easier to create a genuine bilingual curriculum committed to creating bilingual students.
As a high school, we have a student that educated and prepared for going into the higher education. At University of Changshu, we have a lot of Chinese students who excel very well academically and speaks perfect Chinese. However, they cannot go to Chinese university. We often got a student to Harvard, to Yale, but not to Tsinghua and Beida. So if I have a wish, and soon it's Christmas, so that would be if the regulators would be able to allow young, brilliant Chinese students educated in the international education institution in China to be accepted into the Chinese university.
Great, well said.
It's that time of the year where we're looking at teachers and whether they're coming back and who we will have to hire for next year, so that's tops on my mind. Some of the regulations regarding the hiring of foreign teachers in particular can be very difficult for us. For example, teachers have to have 2 years experience. Now that might sound reasonable, but there are some dynamite first-year teachers out there who have gone through high-quality educational programs, and they should be given an opportunity to work with the more experienced faculty. They bring new energy and excitement to a school. So having that regulation interferes quite a bit with the quality of the teachers we can recruit.
I would say truth in advertising. Some way that the Chinese parent gets a true understanding of the real quality of whatever international school is open.
I want to pick up on that in closing. I think we're talking a lot about international education in China. I think it's important that international education is rooted in the Chinese context, not for the preparation to go abroad, but more for the preparation to come back as returnees and to succeed in China, where the opportunities for Chinese students, probably for the foreseeable future, will be most attractive. But that means parents do have a hard decision to make when it comes to the choices that they have. And I think what Eddie said in the end makes a lot of sense. It's upon the parents to understand the essence of the education in different schools, not where the student go to college, not scores and other indicators, but what would actually truly prepare them for longer term success. I think that is where parents need to probably do a little bit more work. And as you all said, I think in this market in China, there's still some barriers that we need to find ways to overcome to make the international education that ultimately work for the Chinese children and ultimately work for China. So with that, we have all the time that we are allowed. Let me bring this to a close, but I think this is an important conversation. Hopefully we'll have opportunity to continue that conversation in the future. Thank you very much to all the panelists.